Oh, Marjorie,
You
you were in the
You ain't got
women's
that thing on
I was in the Army Nurse Corps.
Army Nurse School.
And what's that thing for?
It's a microphone.
Oh, I don't put it on me.
No,
No.
it's fine, just sitting there is fine.
I graduated from St. Elizabeth Hospital, and I really wanted to be in the service very badly, but I didn't get much time in the service because I didn't graduate from nurses training till 1944, and then at the end of 1944, I had to take my exam, so I didn't get in the Army until March, something like that, of 1945, and I went to Newton D. Baker General Hospital right outside of Martinsburg, West Virginia. And I was assigned to paraplegics. All of them were paraplegics. We had that pictures will show we had two big long wards right across from each other, and all the patients were in bed except they could get up in wheelchairs. They tried very hard. They got them, straps to wear around their waist with legs, to strap you in your legs to help you learn how to walk. And it just was almost too much. None of them really ever became able to really walk with those big, heavy braces and all that on. The patients, I got along very well with the patients. The patients could be hateful. After all, they considered their lives over. They started out with families coming to visit them and girlfriends. Pretty soon the girlfriends would be gone. They would not come back as a rule. Families would come back, but after all, these patients their families didn't live real close, and their families died out too and quit coming. And so mostly they just had us. And I got along good with them because I could tease them. I was loud and laughed and didn't point out, didn't say, oh, you poor person, nothing. I didn't ever do anything like that. So I never got a chance. There were 5 of us or something like that, maybe it was a few more. We never got changed around. Other nurses got changed from one ward to another, like for burn people or, psychos and all that, but I never left there. And 5 of us were put in for first lieutenant because we got along good with the patients and could do the work. Also, we were strong enough to move them around a little bit. Although these guys are strong from the waist up, unless they were paralyzed from the neck down, because they go every day. They go to a gym class, and I did have pictures of that, like in a gym with a mattress on the floor, big mattress, and physical therapists or I don't know, men, soldiers would work with them, and boy, their upper parts are strong. So if they didn't like you, I knew one nurse got beat up so bad by one patient. Yeah, he cornered her and beat the devil out of her, and they had to put her in the hospital. But they didn't do anything to him, nothing to him whatsoever. Well, lots of them were bitter, and see, the war was winding down. And when the war would end, they were nothing. Everybody else was tickled to see the war quit, but they knew when the war winded down, they would just go to a veterans place, and they weren't happy about that. But like I said, I got along good with them. I didn't have, never had any trouble with them, and they all thought I was greenhorn, which I was a greenhorn, because I never taken care of paraplegics, and we did not have to bathe them or take them to they all had catheters, and we had to keep track of the catheters, but we never had to give them animals and things like that. They had ward boys, and these ward boys didn't like their jobs any more than the patients liked being there, because the ward boys were all about done, and they had a few more months that they had to put in the Army, and that's how we stuck them there. And they weren't very happy with their job either, both of them. For instance, we had one fella who was a lieutenant who thought he was a big shot. And he couldn't, it was sad, he couldn't do anything. He couldn't blow his nose, he couldn't do anything. So when he wanted anything whatsoever, he'd holler, "Ward, boy!" He was in a private room too, because he was a lieutenant. Well, the ward boys would stand outside his room and say, "Ward boy, ward boy!" And they would not go in. And when you'd have, my job would be lots of times I'd bathe him, I'd have to brush his teeth. And he wanted you to know how smart he was. He said, I'll brush my bicuspids, I'll brush my molars, and I'll brush this, and you were supposed to know where all those teeth were in his mouth, you know, to brush up. But, yeah, I could really brush his teeth, too. But then we got, penicillin was just coming in. And our ward boys had lots of, that's what killed most of them, kidney disease. And because when you're paralyzed and all, your kidneys don't work well, and that's what the kidneys would stop on them. But we'd get penicillin shots about every night. We'd have to. And I always took my shoes off and tiptoed to the ward, see if they didn't feel anything. So I could shoot them in the back, front, or where. And if I was really quiet, they wouldn't wake up. And well, we didn't want them to wake up, because if they woke up, they'd light a cigarette. 3/4 of them would light a cigarette. Then the other fellows would smell that cigarette, and then they would wake up and light a cigarette, and then it's like a baby in a nursery, you know, one baby wake up and they all wake up. And we have to go around all the way around these wards and give them all a shot. I always had to do that at night. Also, it was our job to give them all sleeping pills. I think they all took a sleeping pill. Well, we didn't want them to get addicted, so what we'd do, we'd work for an hour. I had help too, a ward boy come here somewhere, empty them sleeping pills out. But then you'd have to stick just a little speck in the end of each one. Just a little speck, so when you put it back together, because those guys were smart, they'd take them apart, see if you'd been, put a soda in them or something, and taste them. See, they could taste that, what they knew was sleeping pill, then be all right. But you had to be really cautious about to leave enough so they could taste them. And one poor guy who had been a ballet dancer was paralyzed, and he saved his up, and he took them all. Looked into it or anything, but he about went. Well, you know, he just about went crazy, and they would have 10 out of 10, so we didn't have to keep him. Also, we were told right in the beginning, these boys have been through an awful lot. They've all been shot or bombed in the back, or somewhere. A lot of them were in casts for a long length of time because they had no use of their arms. But every now they'd get spastic, and their arms would flop that way, and their legs would flop, and they'd flop so hard the patient could fall out of bed. Oh, I saw it happen more than once. So they'd put him in a cast. And this fellow that I said beat up this one nurse, he was in the most awful cast. It was a contortionist cast. But he could jump into a wheelchair because her arms were so strong. And that's how he pinned that woman into the wall, because he had that awful cast on, you know. And anyhow, I was talking about somebody else that time. We had one patient, so cute, his name was Lippert, and he had a twin brother, looked exactly like him. And it would give you the most sad, awful feeling. The twin brother would come in to visit him. You know, nothing wrong with him. It was like Lippert was walking right into the room to visit his brother. His brother had been marching, and the airplane from the Germans come over and strafed everybody, killed most of them, you know, but he'd been shot everywhere, his arms and everything. We had one patient, and he was such a cute little fellow. They were kids, you know, 18, 19, not very many of them older than that. And they decided about the day before because his legs were so shaky and all that, and moved around so bad, jerked him so bad in bed. They decided they would put a cast on him, on his up here down, chest down. Well, they didn't tell him, and I didn't tell him. I wished I had it, because I knew it was going to happen, and I was the one that had to go back there with the doctors to put the cast on him in bed. I'll never forget that boy. He just cried, and hardly ever did he ever cry. But, oh, if you only would have told me, if you just had told me, I could have been ready for this, you know. Oh, I felt sorry for him. I stood, ordinarily we didn't cry or nothing. You weren't supposed to try to be upbeat. But I just stood there and cried right along with him. I felt so bad for him because I felt guilty that I hadn't told him about it. We had another young man that his injury and then his death was so for nothing. It was in the South Pacific, and he got shot before he, poor devil, even got to shore. You know, he shot before he even got to shore, which was the most sad feeling. And he was paralyzed too, and he come from a odd, very gentle family. And his sister and mother and father come, and they decided they would, he'd just lay there and kind of giggle and say, now you gotta do something and help yourself a little, and just kind of giggle. And so they decided to give him arithmetic lesson, questions like he was still in school. And he never would answer any of them, he'd just giggle and laugh. But he'd made up his mind to die. But you see, we were not allowed to let him die. That's the first thing they told you. They made it that part. We were supposed to keep him alive. But we could not keep him alive. He just drifted off. He just decided to heck with it. And he drifted off and died. It was very simple with him. But as I can remember, he was the only one that we lost and died like that. And he had lots of bed sores. That was another thing. You were not allowed to let him get bed sores either. You really get in trouble if they get bed sores, you know. I'm trying to think of something else. And so finally, a lot of my pictures there, I'll show you, they got sent to Washington, D.C., and President Truman gave them all awards, you know. We got pictures of it, President Truman. Some of us nurses wished we could go with them. It kind of got our goat. They let the Red Cross women go with them, but we didn't get to go with them. We had to stay home and work back in the hospital. We worked 12-hour shifts, like 6 in the evening to 6 in the morning. And in the daytime like that, that's how we worked. We were out in the country in the middle of nowhere, and I was not a person I didn't run around. Practically all the men were doctors who had wives, but that didn't make any difference to them, or didn't make any difference to the nurses. And and I expect you to think I'm goody-goody, but I never drank anything. I didn't want to drink anything. I drank a Coke. And I was the only nurse on my whole floor at where we lived, our residence. I was the only nurse that didn't drink anything but Coke, because it just didn't want anything. So when we had parties, I'd take my Coke with me. And I just didn't want anything else. But anyway, they always let on, like everything is free in the Army Force, but not for nurses. Lieutenants, we got a salary. We got so much, I can't remember why. We had to pay, they took it out for our meals. See, Bud got his for nothing. He didn't get paid much either. And then laundry, cleaning woman to clean her room, and I didn't want a cleaning woman to clean my room. For one thing, she used enough grease on the dresser just to stick to you, and I told her I didn't want all that grease. But they charged us just the same. Then if we wanted, we couldn't go to, if you wanted to go out anywhere, we had to go to an officers club there. You couldn't go to where the enlisted men were or women. And so I would go there with some other of my friends, nursing, and they would all sit around there and play with a glass of whiskey or something. trying to match them, trying to get them a doctor to run around with, you know. That's about what it amounted to. And I got awful sick of that. So I quit. I didn't pay no more money either. I just didn't go. But that made my social life zero, you know. Because
Wasn't much else to
there
do.
wasn't anything else to do. No, there wasn't anything else to do. And I read a lot, but I liked my patients, and I'd take them for walks in the wheelchair and pick some once in a while. We'd go to church and pick some at church. I want to tell you one thing more. When MacArthur got hurt very badly
No,
in
that
the...
wasn't MacArthur.
Who?
It was
Not MacArthur.
Pat.
bad.
Patton. When Patton got hurt and was in the hospital and was going to die, what do you think my patients said? For one thing, when they heard he got hurt, they were all tickled to death. They hated Pat. You know, they really... I didn't know anybody like Pat.
Really?
Nobody. So then they said, a bunch of them that did talk, we hope he lives. We don't want him to die. We want him to live like us, you know, not die. Because if you die, you're better. Although they really didn't want to die, you know, not really. They wanted to be like they used to be. But of course, Patton only lived 2 weeks on it. I don't remember what they ever said about old MacArthur. They were taught skills so they could leave. When they got out of the service, if their parents would take them, they didn't have to go to a veterans hospital. And whoever took them could fix their house up so they could get in and out and have somebody that would help put them to bed and get them up. Then they got to go home. And so they would teach them watch, repair, and various things they could do with their hands, you know. Some took advantage of that. Most of them did not. I don't know what they were going to do when they got home. But this one fella, he went home, and Bud and I and our 3 kids, little kids, went to visit him up in the mountains of New York State, didn't we?
New Jersey.
New Jersey. And his mom and dad had their whole house fixed with ramps and stuff to take care of him. And he became a dispatcher for the fire department, which was really good for him, you know. And I heard from him quite frequently. He'd write me. And then one day, his sister wrote and said he'd had a very bad stroke and he was in the hospital. And then I never heard any more from him. I had a date with one of those fellows in the picture. His father came, and David took an older nurse out, and he took me out. He was real tall. He's the one that had that Bugs Bunny.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
With
He
the
was a real
hypodermic.
cute guy. And I heard later that he got his feelings back and could walk some. And he got married and had 5 daughters. Now, whether that was true, I'm not for sure. I hoped it was true, you know, really. Because practically never did they get any feeling back. Practically never. But we heard he did. But we had a date, and the father took us into town, and he had to wear a catheter and a bag on his leg. And we went out for dinner. And then when his bag got real full, we had to go back. Our date was over.
That's a new way to end a day.
Yeah, that's one way to get that. But they all liked me. I never had any trouble with any of the patients, none of them. They all called me Zimmy. Trying to think of something else. I guess
So you were single when you went into the
yeah,
service.
I had just graduated from St. Elizabeth
Uh-huh.
Hospital. And
So had
see,
you
I was
decided-
just getting in the nurses training when Pearl Harbor.
Mhm.
I'll never forget that because I wanted to go so bad. But you see, I had 3 whole years because that was at Christmas, and I just got in September. And then wasn't long after that why the nurses and doctors from St. Elizabeth created a unit of their own, which I had never. I don't know whether, I suppose all hospitals did that in the beginning. And they left in a unit. Left our hospital, and we were really hard up for help at that time, you know. But I had to wait till I got 3 years in and was able to take state boards and all that before I could join. But I enjoyed it, and I felt like I did I felt like I did good. I really did. I helped them as much as I could. Their attitude, it has to change some. And then it was about time for me to leave, and war was ending, and they emptied the hospital and took people to all different hospitals. Our hospital shut at that time, but it's still there now, I understand, and I don't know what exactly kind of patients they have. They had a multitude of things in. So I had to help. I thought they forgot me, completely forgot me. Every day a bunch of nurses left, a bunch of the ward boys left, and I was still there. And we got down to the food was practically all shrimp. Well, I like shrimp, but not every day. And I really thought I wasn't ever going to get out of there. But see, our patients had to go home by train, back by train. They'd take the windows out and put the stretchers in the windows, you know, and that was my job, to go from one ward to the next ward to the next ward to help empty it out with paperwork and everything else. So, but I never heard from any patients really outside of this Fred that we went to see.
So how long were you in?
Just about a little over a year. Not that long, no.
So the WAPs could enlist them for a year at a time? Is that how it worked?
Well, they told us in the very beginning when I enlisted that we had a meeting. And they said, now, I don't know, that really shook me up. Because I was dumb, I really was. So that means it's the end,
Yeah, I gotta go to the other side.
Well, I don't have much more to add.
That's all right. Okay.
They had a meeting with us and said, now I want you to remember that World War I really didn't end until 1921 or something. And we can keep you in here just as long as we need you. And if you think you're going to get out in a year, you can just think again. No, I didn't sign up for any, I don't think I did. They wanted us to sign up some more, you know, after the war was declared over. They would have taken us. In fact, a very close friend of mine, who didn't have any parents left and only had a brother and was single and older than me a good deal, because see, I was only 21, 22. She decided to stay in because her future was going to be pretty good. She'd keep going up.
Yeah.
But
still, yet the women didn't get the perks and the benefits, or you didn't even get any veterans benefits, did you?
No,
No.
didn't get anything. No.
You got to,
What did I get?
you got to a high veterans benefit,
What?
$300.
That was when I was I decided that I was going to join the Army, so when I was a senior, I could become, what do you call them things? Cadets.
Uh-huh.
You didn't get no $300.
Yes, I did from the
Well,
state.
you might not have.
State of Ohio.
I never.
I think you did.
Well, anyhow, I became a cadet, and they give me a uniform. A lot of the nurses wore them, like when they was out of the hospital. They were these cute old, it was a cute outfit.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm not going to wear that uniform. You might as well just forget it, because I'm not going to wear it. I took it because I could use a little dab of money. But it was certainly a little dab of money. You know, practically nothing. But I wanted to go. I knew I was going to, unless I did pass physical. When I had to go in the Army from Lebanon, that's where I grew up. It's in Lebanon. I was supposed to go down to Fort Thomas, Kentucky. I'd never been out of Ohio. Never. The only thing I ever went to Cincinnati for was to go to zoo once a year, as I remember. Anyhow, I took the bus from Lebanon to Cincinnati. I'll never forget, I was scared to death. Nobody went with me. My other nurses from St. Louis had to go to Wright Field for their physical. But I was the only one that address was Lebanon, so I had to go to Cincinnati. Nobody went with me. Nobody went with me. It was all by myself. And I got down there, and I was on the bus that was going to go into Fort Thomas, Kentucky. And that bus driver got up and he said, "No, you black people, get to the back of the bus." Well, see, I never heard of that. I mean, I didn't know anything about it, but I sure found out quick enough down when I got in West Virginia. Any place you went, they had a colored toilet and white toilet, colored drinking fountain white, but I didn't, and as I remember, I didn't have a colored patient. I had a Mexican or Spanish guy. I don't think I ever had a colored patient to take care of.
Did they send them to a different hospital?
I don't know, maybe they didn't get paralyzed. I don't know. But anyhow, when I got down there, I didn't know what I was doing than flying skinny. And I said I was supposed to take I had the paper. I was supposed to get a physical. Well, they goofed. There wasn't a woman on the place that day getting a physical. But me. Just fellas and me. I never had a physical in my life. Not to go in the nursing training, they didn't require you to have a physical. I think I had to have a smallpox shot or something. Oh, I'll never forget that. That was awful. But I just got a private little room that I was really nervous about it, you know. Then I went from there to Fort Knox and did our basic. Well, they
What did
didn't.
your basic
It didn't
consist of?
amount to anything because but this time they were accepting all RNs, even oldish ones. I mean, oldish 40-something. That seemed very old, you know.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget us. They lined us up and they said, "Now march." One, we were supposed to march. And some of them older women, well, they was, well, and I laughed and I got, hysterical. And oh, I did get it chewing out. Now, I mean, tell you, because I was making fun of all those women. You know, us women going, march, left, right. And it didn't amount to 2 hoops or, well, it was nothing. Except we had to put on our gas mask, of course, and shoot in a building and then shoot back out. And that was scary because we didn't know really what we was doing there either. And then, maybe I'll hear that, people hear that about, well, I was amazed. I went to a Catholic hospital, and you didn't run around half-dressed no matter what in the nurses' lounge. And the nuns would run around and pinch you on the rear end now and then to see if you had on a girdle. Well, in those days, I wasn't fat at all. I was little. But I don't wear girdle no more, but I did in them days, you know, you had to. So when I went in the Army, I wasn't, see, you were modest. And I was nervous as a cat anyhow, going into the Army, and I went in the nurses down there in Fort Knox, this great big hut, and all these nurses running around naked and half-dressed, you know. And I thought, what have I done? You know, what the world have I done to myself? I really thought I was the end of the world. They had showers, but they was open. But they did have in the middle of a room, they had a bathtub. And I wasn't used to taking showers either. I always took a bath. So I'd wait till about 1 in the morning and then sneak in there real quick and take my bath. But when I was assigned Newton D. Baker and hospital, I had a private room. We all did because we all had to work so many different hours, you know. We had to be able to sleep.
Did any of the ladies that you worked with get shipped overseas to do nursing?
Yeah, well, we were going to. But see, I wore glasses, but my eyes did not correct good enough to make me eligible to go overseas. So I was never going to go overseas. I didn't want to go to Japan. I would have gone if I suppose I would have gone to Japan if they told me. But our nurses on our floor were given warm weather clothes. Why? I don't know. It's warmer over there than Germany, you know. And they had got their issue of underwear and stuff like that to go to Japan when the war ended because of the atom bomb.
And
So then it was over. Yeah, it was over. So then, but I was one of the very last ones to leave, period. There were 5 of us. I was the only nurse, and there were a couple ward boys and maybe 3 and another nurse, or some woman, I don't know which, I can't remember. And one of the guys had a car. So we drove to Chicago instead of having taken a bus or train to get out of the Army.
So you got discharged in
Yeah.
Chicago.
outside. I can't remember what camp was it. Well, you,
So-
I don't know. You was out there when you got out.
Oh, I was at Atterbury.
Well, I wasn't there.
So you guys didn't meet in the service?
No,
You met
I didn't
afterwards?
know. I never.
Okay.
I met Bud when I was at St. I went
You
back
came
to St.
and
Elizabeth
worked at St.
Hospital
Elizabeth?
to the orthopedic patients, the ones I've been working with when I left, and then Bud come in when he lost his hand in the corn picker.
Ah, so that's it.
And so one of the other nurses told Bud I had my eye on him. So she was Catholic to boot, and Catholics are always selling tickets to, or did in them days, to bingo, which I don't give a darn for bingo. But he didn't either, but he's a Scotchman in the back, his mom's, and he bought 2 tickets. So he asked me,
Oh.
so that's how we met.
So after you got out of the service,
I
you-
went back.
you
I
stayed
debated.
being a nurse.
Yeah, I debated, and for a couple of years, I went back and forth by bus from Lebanon. In them days, they had a lot of bus service.
King
I went
Brothers.
back.
Mhm.
You probably never heard of this.
King's Brothers.
Run.
King's
run,
Brothers.
Trips
They,
between Dayton.
every half hour, in the
About
real
every
busy
hour.
times, you know, and stop at the NCR and unload it 3/4 the bus. Get off the NCR.
Uh-huh.
Then go downtown, and I'd get off and get a bus out, streetcar, a city bus out to St. Elizabeth.
Okay. So you stayed working with the paraplegics there?
No,
When-
they didn't have any.
Oh, okay.
I never taken care of any paraplegics.
Ah.
Not really. No, I don't remember taking care of any, and people, if they got paralyzed in those days, mostly died because kidney failure and things like that. But now they've learned so much that they live, you know.
So did you,
I don't
but
remember
you,
ever.
when you got out of the service, you continued to be a nurse for a career? You
Oh,
kept
yeah,
in nursing?
yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking of going to Alaska with another friend of mine. I don't know why we'd have gone to Alaska. Wouldn't that have been
That'd
something?
be fun.
Yeah. Then she met the man she married, and I met Bud. So
You couldn't convince him to go to Alaska?
No, I wouldn't have heard.
he lost his hand,
Yeah.
and he had only been out of the service for 6 months, or even that long. It was he got all through that war with being a foot soldier all that time, and never
didn't
got
do it.
anything but shrapnel wounds here and there all that time.
I didn't go through the whole war either. I was,
He was in Nuremberg,
Yeah.
I was dragged, that was after it was over.
but
I
you,
was in
but
Nuremberg.
Bud, you were in the Battle of the Bulge. He don't want to admit
I
that.
went in December,
He was in the Battle of the Bulge,
40.
not the beginning Battle
Well,
of the Bulge.
I took.
But he was a
training
replacement.
first.
But I liked to be in the Army, and I wouldn't want for a career. No, there's nothing. I mean, there's nothing I wanted to do in it.
Mhm. You just wanted to be a nurse.
I wanted to be a nurse. And I wanted to help the fellas, and I felt like I really, and we had a Russian major doctor, his picture's in out there, and a big picture too, who was in charge. And he told our patients that they could do whatever they wanted because they had given their ultimate more even than death. That's how they really did feel, and that's how, so he let them do about what they wanted. But they didn't give me any trouble by drinking, and I never had any trouble like that.
Now, did you have the same patients throughout
All
that
the
year,
time.
or did they rotate in and out?
No. I
They
had all the
stayed there?
paraplegics was where I was.
I just meant, did you get them for a few weeks and then they got sent somewhere else
Not
and a
very
new group
many.
came in, or
Not
was
very
it the
many,
same
no.
guys pretty much all the
Same
time?
ones. Yeah. And practically always the same ones. And you got to know them. And the nurses came out from, at night, in the evening for 2 or 3 hours, RNs from Martinsburg. Now, take care of them a little bit. Relieve the ones on duty for a little while, you know.
Yeah.
Give them a little extra care.
Yeah.
And one of them married one of those nurses. Well, see, she saw, I mean, you'd have to think twice, you know, I think.
Could be a big-
We had this one patient that made you brush his teeth just so, and feed him. Feed me 1 spoonful of this. and feed me over here another spoon. We had to feed him like that. And he bossed us, see, really bad. And he had met a girl in England before he went to Italy. That's where he got it, in shot in Italy. And he wrote to her. He really done a job on her. She did not know how that paralyzed he was from the neck down. She did not know that. And here she sent a letter. She's coming over to marry him. And he knew it, coming over to marry him. And he had that time one of our nurses was stuck on him, and she'd come in the evening and visit him and stay there with him and keep him company and all. And when she found out that girl from England was coming in no time, she was going bananas. She was crying all the time, and she went back to her room, and she was going to have a nervous breakdown. So I did something which I guess lots of people think is bad. I went to the head of the nursing department and told her, but she had to leave. And I don't know what they said to her or anything, but she left. I mean, she was gone. But it had to be. And that girl come over, good-looking woman. I didn't get to see much of her because he was about relieved. And she had brought winterish clothes, I'll never forget, and spent a lot of money on stuff, too. It was so hot. We were so hot there. And all she had was him. He done her dirty, really did her awful dirty, because he was never going to be anything, Practically none of them got, I can't remember any of them hardly ever that got to walk outside of that one Fred that I had my date with. And I'm trying to think to tell you. Oh, they were given a quart milk bottle. Every patient had a quart milk bottle, and they had to have it filled. They had to drink it. 8 quart milk bottles a day, regardless of what. And that was to keep them alive. That was stress.
No?
No, water. Had to drink 8 bottles, quart milk bottle. And let me tell you, I don't care who it was, we weren't any different from the ward boys. I mean, we washed their underwear out just the same as ward boys were. Say they wouldn't wear many clothes, they just wear underwear, that's all they wore in bed. They wore nothing from the waist up, just laid there. But we had to keep, what they did wear, we had to keep that washed and everything. And they'd tell on you if you didn't keep that water bottle full. You had to keep it full, buddy. So they could slip it down, buddy. You had to make sure they had that water. And they was particular about that. Then, one thing else. These boys would have their sheet down to waist. Always, so later you'll see pictures of them laying in bed, always looking up and on, except underwear, not always that. And then you'd come in the ward one morning and they'd have the sheet up here. They had started developing some breasts. Don't call us he's, we're she's now. So and then they started having to get testosterone, shots.
Why would they do
Because their hormone imbalance, you see, when they paralyzed them.
I didn't realize they did that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I never heard you say that before.
Yeah, they would become its. We're just its. That's what they tell you when they get grouchy,
I have never heard of
Well, I found out a lot too because I just graduated.
You were a kid.
I was
They
a
were,
green,
yeah.
a 100% greenhorn.
that.
Well, I guess I'm done.
Well, just a couple questions to
All right.
close up with you. Did you have any siblings, brothers, or other sisters that were in the
Yeah, and
service?
2 of my sisters did come to visit me. Yeah.
They didn't enter
They
the
were-
service, though.
No, not in
No,
the service,
not in the
no.
service.
I come from a family of 4 girls, no boys. But I did have cousins. My one mother's sister had 6 boys. Every 2 years she had a boy, so she had 6. Then she had 2 girls. All 6 of those boys were in the service at the same time. But they were none of them killed, except one of them got burned or I forget. And one of them who was smarter or dumber, I don't know what you want to call him, got lost over there in Europe and didn't find his unit till he'd had a mighty fine time, we figured, before he found his unit, you know, wandering all over Europe. But, and no, I had a lot of cousins, yeah.
If you could tell about one positive thing that came out of your military experience, what would it be?
Goodness, positive thing.
Or more than one, just
Oh,
positive.
yeah.
things.
Well, I don't know. I got more independent, of course. I think I always had a lot of compassion. Patience. I don't think, I don't know whether I got more. I suppose I did more with those boys. But I'm trying to think of anything that I gained. Well, I learned how to, I gained a lot so that I could take care of Bud.
Well, you probably.
See, Bud's not
Well,
paralyzed, but he needs an awful lot of care.
Probably thought you were doing some good, didn't you?
Huh?
You thought you were doing.
Oh, yes. I really thought I helped him. I really did. Because you can't go around saying to them, oh, you poor guys, I really feel bad for you. You couldn't do that. And that's why they liked me there, is because, and tell them stories. They like to hear what you're doing, you know, that type of thing. And I was never backward about any of that. No, I wasn't I felt like I did my good deeds. Sure did. I'm not
If you
into it.
had to say negative things, what would the negative be?
I didn't have any negative.
You did too.
What?
You never liked all them girls a drinking.
Oh, yeah. And I went out on a triple date one night with two other girls. You won't believe their names. They were, the one father married the other's mother. Their names were Yoho and Tohill. Never heard nothing like that, did you? And so they asked me, one of their boyfriends asked them, I got them another fellow, and asked me if I'd go. And I said, yes. So I got the best looking fella of all soldiers, all of them enlisted men. And we went to a dance, and they danced, and I had a good time. Well, when we come out of there, the fellows said, and they bought them, I think they had a bottle, and they said, we're going out and sit and watch airplanes come in at the airport. And I said, no, we're not. I'm a dumb. I know I was greenhorn. Wasn't that green? And I said, we're going back to the back to New Baker. Well, the boys didn't want to go and the girls didn't either. But I threw such a fit that the boys took us to the bus station at that town where it was, and we went back to New Baker. And never again did they ask us, me, never again did they ask me to go on a date. But there wasn't anybody to date. That Patience couldn't date them. There was nothing, nowhere to go even. Not even to a movie unless we went into town.
So would you do it all again?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And if you could say something to those generations 50 years from now that would be watching this about the war and your experience, what would you tell them? Anything that came out of this you'd like to pass on?
Or I would pass on the war is terrible, of course. And that you just don't realize, you know, when you go in, especially fellas. I knew, of course, by the fact that I was a nurse and my patients would be all, I didn't know they would all be paralyzed, of course, but I knew that they would all be injured. But it seems like it's a great adventure, doesn't it? And you find out it's no adventure at all. And the fellas at night would cry for their mothers. You know, they would. They'd cry out for their mothers. And it's sad. And it was so sad to see their families and their girlfriends. And the boys would tell the girls to go home and don't come back. That the girls would. just didn't leave. All of them just didn't leave that quickly. But still, they said, there's no reason for you to come back. Even the married ones, sometimes they want a divorce. They said, there's no need for you to come back. I'm nothing. They all considered themselves nothing, and that is sad. See, that's why when the war ended, and when VE Day and VJ Day, nobody hollered and had a party. There's no party. You know, they show it on TV. There's nothing. It's very quiet, because they all thought, well, we're not going anywhere, you know. We're just staying here, or else we're going to at that time, they felt like they would never get to go home. They'd be going to another old veterans hospital, maybe. They didn't know what was ahead of them, you know. So that it was, I think about especially VJ Day, how they show it on TV, everybody laughing and carrying on and dancing and drinking. Nothing. We didn't have anything like that at all. Well, okay.
All right.
I probably told you so.